Gentlemen, Lance Corporal Howell. I'm your R7 crew chief. You got Lance Corporal Parker Arroyo. He's one of the R7 crewmen. We're going to give you a class on the R7 tonight. The comm equipment. The comm guys can go to the communications equipment later. Break it down a little Barney style for you guys. Basically, the R7 is a floating tool room. It has everything from our standard mechanics tools to upper echelon tools, such as impacts, chainsaws, electric saws, grinders, stuff like that. The R7 also has some unique equipment. It's got a crane, a winch station, air compressor, AC generator, and welding capabilities. It also has cutting capabilities too.
When he says AC generator, he means alternating current, not plugging air conditioning.
Exactly. The crane is actually made up of 5 subassemblies. You got the crane station, boom assembly, boom lift cylinder, rotating head and drive assembly, and wire rope assembly. Crane station, you got your 4 valves of control, the boom going up and down, the boom going in and out, the wire rope going down, and the rotation of the boom itself. It's got 2 hydraulic cylinders to make it extend all the way out, and then it's got one that'll lift it to a maximum of 65 degrees. Safety. When operating the crane, safety is important. You got to watch out for not only the object you're lifting, but the people around you. So hard hats and ground guides are key. And then the recovery winch. Some of the characteristics, it's hydraulically driven. It's got low and high speeds depending on what you're trying to pull and what kind of mire it's in, what it's stuck in. Let's see, it's got a 3/4 inch diameter wire. It has a braking strength of 48,600 pounds, which is quite a bit. The fair lead is on the front of the R7. A giant horn on the front, for those of you who don't know. It's what actually guides the winch cable in and out. The welder, you can stick weld or MIG weld with it. The welders can give you a better class on it later. It also has 3 different bottles of gas. 2 are used for cutting, 1's for helping the welder do its job. The R7 is also different because it has not 1 but 2 governors on it. The normal P7s have 1 governor to keep it from the RPMs from going too high and blowing up the engine. The R7 has a second one that keeps it from going above 1800 RPMs. You don't want to go over 1800 RPMs when you have the AC generator or the hydraulic pump going for the winch and crane. It can cause damage to those components, and you just don't want that to happen. Here's a picture of the R7 being utilized as a workbench. You see we got the ramp down at a 90-degree angle with 2 legs on it holding it up. It's also got the vise attached to it. Some more special tools and equipment. The interior is lined with shelves and toolboxes for storage. Stuff like the tow bar, final drive assembly slings, pack slings, stuff like that. Those are all mounted on the outside of the vehicle. Sometimes you'll find them inside just in case if the crew didn't feel like putting it on the outside of the vehicle. Operations manual, the TM072767 Bravo 10. And just a quick overview of how to turn on and off the hydraulic pump and the AC generator for if you want to run the welder or the air compressor. You do your pre-ops first off, basic crewman stuff. Crank the track up, let it warm up to an idle. Then you're going to turn the governor on first. Then you're going to go back and turn on the selected components you want to run. Then you're going to have the crew member sitting in the driver's station raise up the RPMs until it hits the governor's limit. And then your components should work. When you're doing the winch, there's 2 hydraulic valves right to the right-hand side of the generator and pump house. You got to pull those out when you want to use the crane or the winch station, and when you're done and everything's said and done with, you want to push those back in. And picture of the R7 being used to pull a forklift out of the mud because you probably had some dude driving. There's the mission of the R7 is obviously recovery. That's what the R7 is for. Types are self or light vehicle, like two P7s pulling each other out, and then a dedicated vehicle. We have the R7 for the Amtraks. Tanks have the Abrams, M88, Hercules. There you go. And then next, 4 basic things for recovery is winching, lifting, towing, and expedience. Winching and lifting, basically self-explanatory. Towing something. Expedience, this is the MacGyver stuff you pull out of your hat. This is cutting down trees and digging holes and using what is around you to get out of the situation you're in. Alright, some of the recovery equipment that's on the vehicle, you have shovels, axes, sledgehammers, basically everything a track would need to get out of a situation. You got tanks, pry bars. You have 3 different size wire ropes that all have their own braking strength that you would use in towing situations or to get out of a situation. And then blocks for when you're using the winch. Sometimes you can't just use the winch cable to pull the vehicle straight out. Sometimes you got to get some leverage going. There's 3 different kinds of blocks. There's fixed blocks, running blocks, and floating blocks. Fixed blocks are attached to a stationary anchor, like a tree or something. Running blocks are blocks that move with the load. And then floating blocks are used with the tow cable to allow equal distribution of pulling load to both towing eyes. And you would use the winch cable and the blocks to create a tackle system. There's 2 types. There's simple, which is 1 rope or cable with 1 or more blocks, and it's preferred for lifting or recovering objects. And then compound is 2 or more simple tackles. So you got 1 rope, but you've got 2 or 3 pulleys and blocks and tackles in there. Anchors, basically the R7 can be an anchor. Sometimes if the track's really stuck and the winch cable will actually pull the R7 forward, you might have to take a P7 and a tow bar, attach the 2 together, give yourself some anchor. Another way we were taught in the schoolhouse is if you had a big enough tarp or you were on the beach or something, use a tarp, fill it full of sand, tie it down to the back of the R. It might help you. Stuff like that. So that's MacGyver kind of expedient stuff. And the 5 factors of resistance you'd have to take into account when you're trying to pull the vehicle out of a hole or cover it. It's grade, overturn, mire, which would be like mud or something, water, and tackle. Here's an example of a boot 1833 getting hazed later. Yes. Overturning is if the track actually turned on its side or on top. In that situation, you would need 2 tracks. If it's just on its side, you'd need 2 tracks. You would hook the cables up to each one, and as you were pulling it one way, you'd put resistance on this track. That way, when you turned it over, it wouldn't just slam home and then bust some finals, which, if it's overturned, something's devastated in there. Grade is when a vehicle goes up a slope. Obviously, overturning, which I just explained to Corporal Gonzalez, is when a vehicle actually turns on the side or on top. Overturning, when you're calculating the resistance for it, it's actually half the vehicle's weight because the weight will actually pull the track down. Water resistance, there's an actual formula to figure out how much resistance the weight of the water adds to the track. Mire, mud, or natural terrain. And then 3 classifications of that. Wheel and track depth is just equal to the weight of the vehicle and the cargo that's in it. Fender and hole depth is twice the total weight of the vehicle. So if you're above the track about midway up, it's twice the vehicle weight. And the turret or cab depth is 3 times the vehicle weight. So you gotta figure Amtrak's 26,000 or 26 tons, 3 times that. Tackle resistance. This is just the natural resistance that occurs with your rigging. Between the cable and the friction going around the pulleys and the blocks, it creates natural resistance, which you got to take into account. Recovery solution. Recovery solution is the mechanical advantage you will need to actually pull the vehicle out. There's a lot of math involved. It's pretty simple. Everybody here should have done math in Marine, so you should be able to do it. You want to use a mechanical advantage when the object you're pulling out is the weight exceeds the limitations of the equipment you're using. So like our winch, say it only pulls 30,000 pounds, but the thing that's stuck requires a force of 50,000 pounds. You would need to find some kind of a mechanical advantage using a block and tackle system to pull it out. That's an example I just gave. Ratios for the mechanical advantage, you just got 1 to 1. It just changed the direction of the pull. So say the R7 was sitting here, you had a pulley there, and the stuck vehicle was over there. It was just changing the direction of the pull. 2 to 1, creates mechanical advantages, but uses the weight of the mired vehicle as distribution on 2 lines. And then 3 to 1, pulling power is now tripled due to the weight being distributed on 3 lines. That's basically saying you have your R7 here, you've got the winch cable going out and then coming back, and then going back out, and then coming back again. That way there's 3 different lines pulling all that weight. Yes. The fall line forces, that's just the weight of the cable itself adding to the resistance. Recovery formula, you need to determine your mechanical advantage, tackle resistance, your total load resistance, and you want to double check your answers. It's better to be safe than sorry. Some of us aren't that great at math. Double check your answers, have somebody else check it for you. That way you make sure it's better to overdo it than underdo it. And then the 8-step recovery procedure, it literally spells out recovery for you. It's not recon area. Make sure there's no enemy present. You're not going to get ambushed in the middle of recovering a vehicle. Estimate situation. Okay, I'm here. The track's half buried in mud. Let's figure this out. Then you got to calculate your ratio. You got to factor in load resistance, tackle resistance, all that stuff. Get it ready to go. Obtain resistance. It means just get ready to pull. Verify solution. Just double checking all your math. Have somebody else check for you. Make sure everything's right. Erect the rigging. That's when you actually put hands on vehicle. You start panning out the winch cable, setting up your block and tackle. Recheck rigging. Double check everything. Make sure everything's attached right. Make sure everything's secured. We don't want any injuries. And then you are ready to recover that vehicle. And 3 recovery methods: gauge chain. You use 2 vehicles attached to each other to pull 1 vehicle out. Overturned vehicle, like I explained to Corporal Gonzalez, is you actually have to use 2 vehicles to help turn the vehicle over. That way you're not slamming it home. And then extreme situations, 2 R7s can be used if you have 2 R7s available. All right. That was your R7 class. Any questions?
Alright, so you said there was 2 like safety modes or something?
Speak up.
To stop the. Okay, so in the class you said there was 2 like safety modes or something about the RPMs.
Yes, the
Governors.
2 governors.
Why is there 2? Not just one?
Because
There's-
there's a lot more shit on the R7 than there is on the P7.
On the P7, there's 1 governor keeping the track from going too high, just blowing up the pack in general, because the crewmen don't know how to do that without somebody holding their hand. But the R7, it has components like a generator for alternating current.
Closer for the electricity and stuff.
Yes, and it's got a hydraulic pump, an extra hydraulic pump on the back side. They have a short drive shaft that actually goes from the back of the motor to the pump and the generator. And if you go over 1800 RPMs, you can sling that, you can damage the actual pump and the generator itself. And also it prevents us from engaging something at too high of an RPM, because if you engage that at too high RPM, it's going to snap that drive shaft and cause a lot more damage than is needed. Any other questions?
In slide 8, there was something about when lifting over 6,000 pounds that I didn't catch.
Yes.
Eight.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. When lifting over 6,000 pounds, you must have the green stripe on the crane showing and a 30-degree angle minimum. We have a 30-degree, or we have an angle finder. It's magnetic. It sticks on top of the crane. When you're lifting over 6,000 pounds, say it's a lot harder for me to pick this up and have it close in and lower it down than it is for me to hold it out here and lower it down. So when you're lifting, there's actually a green stripe. When you let the boom go out, there's actually a green stripe painted on it. So you want to make sure you're at 30-degree angle and the green stripe is showing. If you go below that 30-degree angle, you want to retract it back in. That way you don't, if you're at a certain position with the crane, you don't actually tip the R7 or drop your load or cause the boom to fail. Any other questions?
Who's in charge of a recovery?
The R7 crew chief, I believe, and then the maintenance chief.
Senior 2141 on site. That doesn't just go for R7 recoveries. It goes for self-recoveries if you're out there and one of your tracks gets stuck and you're doing self-recovery, a track pull and track out. The senior 2141 is going to be the one doing these equations and determining what it's going to take to pull that thing out safely.
On the mire and where it is on the vehicle, is it like a 50% decrease in the weight when you use a block and tackle, or so the 1-in-1, the 2-in-1?
Yeah.
Every one of the tackles is rated, they're rated differently. So if you're running this recovery mission, you need to know what the breakage strength of the rope is and how much mechanical advantage each block and tackle is gonna give you. The mire just tells you how many you may need to do. You may need 3 anchor vehicles. You may need to use 6 different tackles. You may use all of them. So you need to understand what the capabilities are of the vehicle itself, the ropes, the tackles, and everything, and understand what they're all rated at, so that nobody gets hurt out there and you can pull that out smooth sailing.
And then on that 3-to-1 ratio where it's going to vehicle, block, tackle, and back to the vehicle, where are you anchoring the actual cable when it comes back to the R7?
To the front, there's
So there's a
Is it eye hooks?
eye hook on the front of the R7.
I didn't know if that was enough strength.
Anything else, gentlemen? Alright, my name is Lance Corporal. That was your R7 class. This is Lance Corporal Carter. Yay.
Kill.
Kill.
Hey, all 2141s know that there's a difference between right?